So coming off of the previous chapter, we saw Shigaraki having like this mind battle with All For One, and he wound up having like this breakthrough, and his hair started to grow, and he became like this ambiguous personality, and this electricity like came out of him and blew Star back, and she's wondering like, you know, what happened to him, why did his hair grow? And that's honestly a good question, and it's not really being explained yet, but it has something to do with this personality battle for sure. And then Shigaraki, or pseudo Shigaraki, says it may be known as the strongest quirk, but there are still limits to it. So I guess New Order is known as the strongest quirk. I personally don't think that's the case. I mean, the people in this world don't have the knowledge that we do, obviously, so they don't know the intricacies and powers of One For All, or even really fully understand All For One, but they still at least know that All For One is a thing. So I'm curious why All For One isn't considered the strongest quirk. But then we're coming to a very large stretch of exposition explaining New Order. And I'm talking like Togashi level of exposition. But it's forgivable because it's interesting, and Horikoshi is a workhorse, so it's, you know, fine if he needs to put this out there every now and then. And also, dare I say, there might be some meta commentary in here too, at least regarding New Order. So he says Star and Stripe quirk is kept strictly confidential by the government. Makes sense. Although the details of her quirk are kept tightly under wraps, after touching a target and calling out its name, she can freely impose any rule upon it. It's an almost fantastical power to control others like child's play. Can it even be called a quirk in the first place? This is what I was talking about with the possible meta commentary here, because this was one of the main comments coming out of chapter 330. And I'm sure you yourself maybe question this or have seen others questioning it. I mean, I think even in my review for it, I said that this power was like something out of Jujutsu Kaisen or something. So regardless of the intention here, he's very aware of what he's doing. There has to be a limit to how much she could power up and strengthen her body. If it were actually limitless, she would be able to kill me with just a touch. It wouldn't make sense for her to hit me with such force. On the other hand, it appears that there is no limit to which she can weaken things. So that right there, I think, is a good indicator of the capacity of this power, I guess, on at least one end of its spectrum, because it apparently has two here. So increasing power or gaining strength or whatever can only go so far. That's why in the previous chapter she said she's not quite as strong as All Might, but still pretty strong. And obviously that's true. We saw how she, you know, clocked Shigaraki. It looked like she was Izuku or something, using maybe 60% or even more. But on the other side, there's no limit to how much she can weaken something. That's why she was able to do that Death Note thing to Shigaraki in the previous chapter. Now going further, he says, why couldn't she just set a rule, if you are touching the air in the designated area, you will die? So she probably can't set rules if her mouth is forced shut or against intangible things. So he's trying to explain here that she can only go so far with the applications to intangible things. So I guess that's why when she was going against Shigaraki, instead of applying a rule to what he does to the air, she decided to just take the air away from that area, controlling the air itself rather than it being like a conduit for her rule. But then he says, actually, what if she could? But the effect was just really weak. So that might be Horikoshi's way of saying like, this quirk is really nuanced and ambiguous and could have many applications that maybe you'll never fully understand. So stop questioning me. Because like I've also said in a previous video, I think for sure Shigaraki / All For One is going to be taking this quirk here, so he's going to be using it in the future, maybe a lot. And I guess Horikoshi is going to be experimenting, but also, you know, doing a lot of fantastical things. So we don't really need to question all the logistics of this quirk because it's not being definitively defined. And then he says it seems that she has a much greater freedom in setting rules with things that are not biological. And then he essentially says it could be because of the difference between setting rules between the biological thing that needs to be identified by its name or what it recognizes itself by, and the non-biological not needing that prerequisite for its rule. So like if Star sees a rock and she thinks that's a rock, and she says that rock shoots into the sky. It's going to happen because it's non-biological, and her perception is that that thing identifies as a rock. At the same time, this is explaining why her Death Note rule wasn't working on Shigaraki in the previous chapter, because that person didn't recognize themselves as Tomura Shigaraki. But going more into that, he says it's now unclear, what am I, Shigaraki, or am I Shimura Tenko? And that's really interesting because he was never really brought into the equation before. I mean, we've seen glimpses of him, especially from the perspective of Izuku, and before that through flashbacks and stuff, but most recently it was kind of just a battle of the minds between Shigaraki and All For One, but Tenko was never name dropped. So now that he's being mentioned here, I'm thinking that it's going to play a bigger part going forward here. So then Star requests from Admiral Akbar for him to send like this powerful missile salvo, because I guess she's decided that she cannot take out Shigaraki by herself. Without knowing his identity and not being able to impose rules on him, she just can't get the job done here, and she's going to need some help. But while the missiles are on their way, she's going to keep Shigaraki in place here. So I guess she's doing like her ultimate move, or one of her ultimate moves, because she says the atmosphere shall solidify to become 1,000 times my size. And that's a kind of a vague rule for what's actually happening here, but we'll let it slide. But she winds up creating like this huge kaiju Susanoo stand thing. And another cool thing about it is that apparently it can't be seen by Shigaraki because it's just made of air. And then she punches Shigaraki with this thing and Hulk claps him. This is an incredible sequence. Something straight out of One Punch Man. And I said this on Twitter, but this is like Horikoshi's impression of what a Murata and Togashi chapter fused would be like. But it doesn't stop there, because while he's like stunned after getting smacked, she has all of the jets fire their lasers into one beam, and she winds up grabbing it, which is called the ultra high power unification laser, Kuranos, I think it's called. Sorry if I'm saying that wrong. But this is just one of the greatest things we've ever seen in the series. I mean, it's apple and oranges comparing this to like the United States of Smash or other, epic moments like that, but this is just really incredible stuff here. And then she says if he's defeated by this, then there's no way that Endeavor couldn't have taken him down during the war. So I guess that's like implying that this is either less than or equal to the plus ultra prominence burn. Now that may or may not be true, but that was like a 75% Shigaraki, and this is a 97, 98% Shigaraki, and he's still getting roasted by this. But he's like taking it, I guess. I guess he's like perpetually regenerating while also getting melted. But then we come to the end of the chapter and the missiles are showing up. And Admiral Akbar specifically says its name is Tiamat. Make sure to make every single one count. So he's saying the name specifically so that she can impose rules on these things, which is going to be amazing. And I'm really curious to see what she's going to do. Remember, she has more control over non-biological things. For some reason, I'm thinking she might like make a spirit bomb out of these things, like they all come together into one, but that would be a little repetitive, right? She kind of just did that with the land. So let me know what kind of rules you think that she's going to make on these things in the comments, and just let me know your thoughts on the chapter in general. And if you liked the video, guys, please give it a like, and please subscribe if you haven't already. Have a great day. See you in the next one.